I also love the thought that each of us can change and become better just 1% at a time, that we don't need to necessarily make this great leap or this great change. Just one tiny percent at a time can make all the difference in changing the direction of our lives. Hi, this is Anita from the Dusty Roads Podcast. In this Dusty Road podcast, we're all about living our life as a global citizen, but sometimes we tend to talk about a few other things. And today I want to talk a little bit about the 1% rule with goals and with New Year's resolutions. We're getting to be near the end of the year, and there's many of us start looking about what are our New Year resolutions? What do we want to improve in life? What do we not want to improve? Maybe there's some things that you want to decide you want to do, like learn a new language, or maybe you have some other goal that you want to accomplish. The 1% rule it comes from the British cycling team. And if any of you have been listening to podcasts, you know that one of the things I've also enjoyed doing is cycling. And I love to be able to cycle throughout different parts of the world. But, for a long time, the British cycling team was the laughingstock of the cycling world. Their reputation was so bad that there were European bicycle manufacturers that didn't want them riding their bikes or wearing their gear because they were afraid that it would basically hurt their brand, that they were, such a low quality cycling team that they were having maybe a hard time even getting sponsors. This all changed in 2003 when Sir Dave Brailsford became named as the performance coach for the British cycling team. Since 1908, the British cyclist had won just one medal at the Olympic Games. No British cyclist in 110 years had ever won the Tour de France. So basically, they were really like this sort of mediocre team that really hadn't done very well. They'd only ever won one medal in 100 years. Their performance was so poor that, like I mentioned before, they were kind of the laughing stock of the World Cycling Association. But during this time, Sir Dave Brailsford, he saw this and he started to use a principle, which basically was that I call the 1% improvement rule. The 1% improvement rule says that if we do not need to make an earth-shaking improvement to accomplish great things, but if we can just improve by small increments each day, then great things can happen. I like to equate this a bit to learning languages. I've studied quite a few different languages. One of the great keys that if you want to learn a different language is that you really need to do a little bit of study every single day. It doesn't mean that you need to do like a huge amount. You don't have to study for 5 hours every day. Even if you study for 10 or 20 or 30 minutes or whatever you can do every day, then by the end of the year, you would have had put in quite a few hours and you would have been able to accomplish great things. Dave Brailsford took this with the British cycling team and he decided we're going to make these little 1% changes. And so here's some of the basic changes that they did for this 1% change. They redesigned the bicycle seats so they were more comfortable. They rubbed alcohol on the tires for better grip. They asked their riders to wear electrically heated shorts to keep their muscles at an ideal temperature while riding their bikes. The outdoor riders switched to indoor riding suits. They tested different massage gels to see which ones gave a quicker recovery. They hired a surgeon to teach the riders how to wash their hands properly so they would not get sick. They determined which pillows and which mattresses led the cyclists to have the best and the most comfortable sleep. They painted the inside of the cycling truck white so that they could see every speck of dust and be able to see what dust was getting on the bikes. They started doing these types of small changes and other changes and just 1% at a time, 1% at a time. They just started making these small changes in their diet, their lifestyle, and their training. At the same time, many of their riders also started making little small changes throughout with their own lifestyle and their diet and their riding. So over the years, these little changes that they started making, just bit by bit and consistently making these changes, began to add up to great improvements. Here's some of the things which happened then to the British cycling team. In the 2008 Olympic Games, they won 60% of all available medals. You need to remember that this time before this, the cycling team had only won one medal in 100 years. And by 2008, which is 5 years after they started making these changes, they won 60% of all the medals. In the 2012 Olympics, the cycling team set 9 Olympic and 7 world records during that Olympics, and they did phenomenally well. In Tokyo, the British cycling team won 12 medals and was the top winning cycling team in the Olympics. They also went on to win the Tour de France. And you have to remember, they had never won a Tour de France in 110 years. So they started winning the Tour de France. They won it in 2012, 2015, 2016, 2017, and 2018. They're continuing to still, win medals, in the Olympics and Tour de France, and still continuing to do very well in all of their cycling. The British team now is a dominant team in the cycling world. They are considered to be one of the top cycling teams. And they accomplish this just by changing their daily routines 1% or just bit by bit or a little bit at a time. And speaking of this, Sir Dave Brailsford, he said this: to give you a bit of background, when we first started out, the top of the Olympic podium seemed like a very long way away. Aiming for gold was too daunting. As an MBA, I become fascinated with Kaizen and other progressive improvement techniques. It struck me that we should think small, not big, and adopt a philosophy of continuous improvement through the aggregation of marginal gains. Forget about perfection, focus on progression, and compound the improvements. I really love that thought because I think that, this really is a great way for all of us to think. I think that if, whatever it is you're looking to improve in your life, whether it's your fitness, whether it's your cycling, whether it is, you want to learn a new language, you want to get better in school, if you can just focus on these little, 1% goals, then over the year that these 1% goals can become it can become a great goal. Like if you do 1% every single day, then by the end of the year, I think you could improve something like even 36% or something. It's, it becomes, quite a significant amount. So when you're looking this year, you're thinking about, what are your New Year resolutions or what do I want to accomplish in the new year? Or maybe it's not even the new year. What are my goals for this year? What do I want to do? What is something I want to learn? Maybe you feel like you want to learn a language and you think oh, this is so daunting. How am I ever going to learn this language? And if you can just take it step by step, bit by bit, and then you can, just look at this 1% and just make these small little gains and make these small little changes in your life. Then over this period of time, these small changes can add up to be big changes, and they can add up to become life-changing. That's why I really, really love this thought or this principle about the 1% rule. And I really love this story about the British cycling team. I realize it's a little bit off of some of the stuff I normally talk about, but I also love the thought that each of us can change and become better just 1% at a time, that we don't need to necessarily make this great leap or this great change. Just one tiny percent at a time can make all the difference in changing the direction of our lives. This is Anita from the Dusty Roads podcast, all about living life as a global citizen. We hope you've enjoyed this podcast. If you'd like to subscribe, we'd love to have you be part of our community. We'd love to hear from you. We'd like to thank you for taking the time to listen to us, and we hope that you'll be able to make those little 1% gains in your life. We'd like to also thank Rico for his help in putting together these podcasts. We know without you, it would not be possible. Thank you all, and continue to live your life as a global citizen.